Hi, Anti-Society! Welcome back to the Antisocial Planet, and today we are checking out Dreamcatcher's Fly High and getting into the prequel key, which does give me a pretty good hint about what the storyline is going to be for this song, but I also had lots of really great comments from Somnia telling me about the different things in the music video for Goodnight and what to kind of expect a little bit going into this one, because I know that there's all these little details in it that I can't possibly pick up on everything the first time that I watch it. And one of the things that I just completely did not register correctly in the Goodnight music video was that it was all happening as a continuation of Chase Me, and there wasn't any backstory things happening. That's what this music video and this EP is all about. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some, right? Sometimes I pick up on things and other times I go in a different direction, but I guess that's part of the fun of watching new people see it, is that you get different interpretations. So we had the girls in the last one escaping from this hunter man that has been in this house. I want to say hotel because of the whole Shining thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But them escaping from him trying to trap them with the book of spells or something. There was something magical going on, and them getting away and actually dropping the book. So I wonder if that is something that we will later come in to. I don't know how long this particular storyline continues now that I think about it. Let me know how many albums fall underneath this. But we're going to be getting into a prequel of sorts. We will see what happened to make the Dreamcatcher members be stuck in this place and have these different abilities that they have, and what exactly led up to it. We've seen the pictures from Chase Me, so there's a little hint of how they might have been before they became these representations of nightmares, of fears, and things like that. So we'll have to wait and see, but we're going to be checking out the song and the lyrics, of course, first, and then getting into the MV so that my brain doesn't panic. So let's check out this song first. Okay, I feel like I'm not ready. I don't know what this is gonna be. Also, can we talk about Thami's picture in this? Because I don't know, it hasn't been the same ever since I saw her cover of Dessert, that my brain is just doesn't know what to do with her. Anyway, let's focus on the song. Ooh. I wasn't expecting the piano. I like it though. Dramatic. No, I wasn't ready. Wow, really nice piano. Very dramatic, like I was saying, but also there's something, it's almost like, when there's a specific sound in a TV show or something that is associated with a flashback happening. So that's kind of what it made me think of too. I love how we had almost a synth sound coming in for that build up before all the guitars and other instrumentation came in. There's a really cool synth that's higher up that was also quite nice. Again, it has that feeling of elevating the whole production. Oh, it's a guitar. Ooh, okay, before we get into the vocals. I love how we had all of those different pieces coming together. Really heavy percussion happening, which I kind of like because it has this dark kind of grounded sound, and then we have these guitars and synths that are much higher in the register. So you have this very clear distinction between those two things, which I think for something called Fly High, you want to feel like that guitar is elevated because you want to kind of mimic that feeling of what we're probably going to be getting into, of feeling like you're ascending above something. I'm assuming haven't gotten into any of the actual story of the song, but then to have that percussion section feel really well grounded, you can only tell how high you are if there's a ground for reference, right? So having that really grounded sound on the bottom does a really good job of making you see that contrast of how high the other instrumentation is. And I loved how it all came together, where it was kind of more staccato of it all hitting together in the production, and then we had a little brief moment of silence, and then we're getting into the vocals. Love that. That really driving guitar though.
dreaming.
There's so much happening. It keeps shifting from this very like uplifting sound, and then we'll have this darkness where before we had like all of the instrumentation hitting at the same time, which has a lot of oomph to it. Then we're having there where Dami came in with her vocals, which had a much darker sound to it. There's just a lot of that. It's like jarring, right? It's like flipping between dream in the sense of, you know, when you say you have a dream, it's something nice, it's something pleasant. It can be a nice thing to escape into a dream, but then we also have nightmare, right? Which is still a dream, but it's something that's a little bit different. And I love how they're throughout all of these songs interpreting what it means to feel like you're in a dream in different ways. And this one I just feel like is the most jarring out of them all, where it just feels like compared to like Chase Me and Good Night, this one can like switch very suddenly. And I feel like that is something that happens in dreams too, of like it can be normal or it can be happy, it can even be like mundane, and then it can suddenly shift very quickly into something else. And this song just feels that way to me. Like that, where we had, I guess, Hamdang coming in? Like a dangerous rainbow, right? Like that lyric in and of itself, we don't think of like rainbows as dangerous, right? Rainbows are usually seen as these very beautiful things. So adding dangerous to that, it feels very contrastive. So they're doing a lot of things where they're juxtaposing things together that are like both pleasant and maybe even something that you aspire to, and these elements that are much darker. Even sonically. Ooh, no, the way that we came into that, where we had that little stop and then it just elevated a lot. Like there's something so interesting to me, and someone who knows more about music theory and playing instruments can hopefully fill me in on this. There's just something very like uplifting and light, and it feels like soaring, right, with the production. And then these moments of really like gritty, almost grungy, dark sounds. So it's like the two things, right, of like both feeling very airy in terms of like production and not so much in like the vocal performance. So they are doing a very like bright, forward placed sound, and then we have these darker, grungier sounds in comparison. I find that fascinating. Ooh, beautiful little head voice. The song is like fascinating to me. Like it's super catchy, but it's jarring. I don't know if it's, I mean, it could possibly be like a translation thing too, but like with the story, I feel like it's harder for me to pin down the narrative of the song, which is not what I've had with the previous couple of songs. I mean, I get it to some extent, as again, it's that feeling of like being caught in a dream, as opposed to before. I think in Good Night we talked about being stuck in one up to that point. So this one is more like caught. It's more of a mutual thing, whereas before in like Chase Me and Good Night, it felt more like they were the ones ensnaring someone, whereas this one feels more like they've gotten stuck in it. And it's that contrast of like forgetting, and this one feels far less like they're in control. I think that that's where I'm getting with like the narrative of it, those switches in the production and the vocal performances, where it feels like someone has control over them. And again, if this is a prequel and like storyline things, right, then that might make sense, right? They're not in a position of power in the way that they are in kind of the current timeline. It's not heavy rock influence in the same way either. See, even that part too of like, did we have anyway, this one where it's like where she talked about being pulled in, right? So again, there's that feeling that they're no longer in that position of being in power. Someone has power over them. And that could be lots of different things. That could be, we could talk about a dream in terms of like an aspiration, right? Like a dream for them could be being Dreamcatcher, and it could be that they've been pulled in by being Dreamcatcher, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like they suddenly found themselves stuck in this dream, and they're like, and stuck isn't necessarily like a negative connotation in that one. It's like, oh, we thought that this was something that we had to like hold on to and fight for and do all of these things to like have in our life because it mattered to us, and now it's here to stay. Like we couldn't get out if we wanted to, and we don't want to. You know, it's a different feeling. And like I said, it feels less dark in general. What I was saying, kind of, it doesn't feel as rock influenced as the other ones. I feel like it's a different kind of rock. It feels more thematic. It sounds like something that would be a story at like a very victorious moment, right? So that could be it too. It could also be pulled in by having Somnia, having fans, having people who care about them, having a team around them that cares about them, like staff and people who help them in their label. It can be each other, right? Like it can feel like they're no longer afraid that they're going to not have each other around. So it feels less like a fight and having to prove themselves in the way that the previous songs did, which is interesting. I was gonna say, did we get a little Gahyeon rap moment? Ooh, we talked about mirrors again. We had that in the previous one, but also the idea of like, they're saying like fake it too. Fake it, break it, I think it was the lyric, which is interesting to me too. I have many thoughts. See that too, of like, can't live without you. We had the 7 lights, which makes me think of the members of them representing 7. And again, I've talked before, 7 also is normally symbolic of completeness in a lot of different texts and stuff, specifically like biblical contexts, but it is also associated with other texts that use like symbolism and numbers. 7 is usually completeness, fulfillment, that kind of a thing as well. I was saying like, I can fake it. It's making me think maybe it's the persona of them, and that can be a few different things. Whenever you're on a stage, you're embodying some kind of persona. I think it kind of translates to different things, but maybe that's just because I have like a theater background, so I'm like, everything to me feels like there's character in some way. But when you're on a stage, you're embodying some kind of character, some kind of persona. I've talked before in my music reactions where I say I like the way that someone on stage is embodying the character that they're playing, and I don't mean that necessarily in the way that they're lying or being something they're not, but you want to embody the narrative of whatever it is that you're singing when you're performing on a stage. Stage is a performance. It's not how you usually go about your life. Nothing you do on stage is going to be completely mundane to your everyday life because the situation is not a normal thing. Even if you're a performer who performs all of the time, it's still not the way that you're going to act when you're like walking down the street necessarily. Within that context, you're playing a persona because you need to fit the environment, right? It is entertainment, it is a stage, it is a performance, so you need to perform a persona that fits with that context. But I think it can also be draining, right? Like it's a lot to be that person that you need to be when you're performing, especially in idol culture, because it can be really strict about what an idol needs to be. But even like me, like making videos, there are some days where I'm like, I can't be the person I want to be on camera. And that's not necessarily that I am not being authentically myself. It's just that there's a certain person that I am when I'm making videos that isn't who I am when I'm washing dishes or something. You know, like I'm a different person when I'm doing like chores around my house than I am when I'm sitting in front of a camera recording something. They're all me, but it's like I'm putting different parts of myself forward. And there are some days where I'm like, I just don't think I can do that. So I understand in that regard of like what it might be to say like, I can fake it, not necessarily in a way of wanting to lie or deceive themselves, but in a way of, I want to be the person that you need in this moment. Does that make sense? Like, I want to be a certain person when I'm on camera. I want to be cheerful. I want to be insightful. I want to be engaged. And sometimes that's not who I can be when I'm having a down day. And I don't want to make a video then because I'm like, I don't want to be that person for the people who watch my videos. So I can kind of see the same thing in that. Maybe I'm digging too much into it, but that's what we do here. I feel like this one is making my mind whirl a little bit. Maybe it's because I'm getting distracted by production things, but the duality of this song is fascinating to me. Oh, that's so interesting. We had like the high guitar, that really dark sounding guitar. There's like some chunky bass in there. I love that little musical moment. With the drums too. I was like, for a second, I was like, who's singing? Is that Sua? Wow, she sounds great. And the, again, sudden jarring contrast with the music that we had before that. Ugh, good little vocal moment. No, the whole thing. Okay, the like Sua, and then we had what Shion coming in, and then that pullback of everything with Jiu. Her voice is so soft, and I love that she had that moment because she just has a really soft, breathy voice in general. So if you want the most contrast with like the darker, heavier sounds that we have in other parts, I think that Jiu's voice is like perfect for that. So I love that they gave her that part, especially with all of the production kind of basically pulling out. There was way less in her part, so it meant that you could really let her voice be really delicate and soft because you didn't have her competing with production in this. They're so good. Ooh, the ad-lib in the back. Ooh, that's an interesting little production. I also want to talk about how they have some really interesting vocal melodies. They usually do anyway. It's one of the things that I love about Dreamcatcher's music is that their vocal melodies are just really interesting to me too. I feel like I can't figure this song out, which only fascinates me. My brain is like, I want it to be clear to me. Maybe you guys have more of an idea of this because they probably talked about it in the years since this song has come out. So by all means, leave me all of your thoughts in the comments below. But I really like this line where it's like, you can't sleep in this dream forever, because it makes me think of Lullaby in the previous album, which was a similar thing of this idea that eventually you have to wake up, eventually you have to walk away from any point in your life and move on, but that doesn't mean it has to be now. It doesn't mean that you can't appreciate that you're in this moment right now. So it has that similar feeling if we're kind of going from the previous EP into this one, that idea of we know that we can't have this dream forever, but we can enjoy it now. We can stay here now and be together and appreciate it. I feel like this is the most vulnerable they've been in the leading track chronologically. I'm not gonna do some of like the later stuff that I've done, but going through it chronologically, I feel like this is the most vulnerable they've been in the title track as opposed to on the B-sides that maybe not everyone has heard. So I find that fascinating too, that they've gotten to a point where that sincerity and that intimacy with their fans and acknowledging them is leaking into the title tracks in a way that they didn't with the previous two. I love that little pause. Also the ad-lib in the back. I love this with the keys. I find it interesting too that they ended with that line of I'm trapped in the nightmare, because again, nightmare isn't necessarily a good thing, but at the same time nightmare is part of their story, and not just like within the like storyline stuff, which yeah, it's the nightmare storyline, but it's also part of their story as like Dreamcatcher and as a group and the way that they talk to their fans, and it has a different meaning to their fandom and them as musicians. Maybe I'm thinking too hard about this, and I'm sure that people will tell me, but I feel like this song is a little bit of a puzzle that I want to solve. Maybe the music video will give me some more clues, because I don't know how much of the song is written with the storyline in the music video in mind. I know some groups, they're completely separate and then they just happen to correlate in terms of like themes. I know with other groups, they're more integrated. So I find that fascinating. But let's go into the music video. Okay. Wasn't the scene with the butterflies in the Reason music video? I know someone said that the book in Goodnight was in the Reason music video, but wasn't the scene in it too? Because they went through like a bunch of clips from previous stuff. Ooh. Is this the place where they were stuck before? Ooh, okay. Well, first off, already we have like a lot more light, a lot more colors. They have more youthful outfits. They're like smiling, which is not something that, well, they're smiling like with like joy. We've had some smiles that are a little bit questionable in terms of their intentions. I'm going back because before in Goodnight, I was talking about the possibility of there being pairings of some kind. So I'm like thinking too much in depth about what that might mean. Yeah, what are we looking at? Ooh, the like effect on the camera is interesting of that like shift in perspective, and it has kind of like glitching out. I was thinking of this shot because it looks like she looks directly at the camera. She might be looking slightly off because the next scene that she looks over, it's not directly in the camera, but I feel like since we're switching where it's almost like a first person perspective in some of the shots, it's almost like the camera is being the perspective of someone like lurking there and then being seen. Something being seen. Ooh, I like the little hand detail. What's in the jar? Ooh, sorry for anyone who doesn't like spiders. I'm not afraid of spiders, so. But I find that interesting with all of the things that are. Hang on, I'll go back in case you're not a spider person. I don't want to leave it on the screen for too long. But I think that's interesting when I was talking before about how it felt like, even this, it's like I'm trapped. Before I said that it felt like they were being ensnared, trapped, stuck. So the idea of there being a spider of some kind that is like trapping them in a web is very interesting to me. We also have them like representing fears, and I said like some people don't like spiders, so that might be pulling from that. Like they're taking something that is usually associated with fear of some kind. I feel like a lot of people are scared of spiders. I'm not, because I have a vendetta against mosquitoes, so spiders and I are friends. But that idea of like fear from something like that, being trapped, so there's lots of little things, not just them being trapped in like maybe a web, but also they have the spider in like a jar, which is also trapping it, right? I feel like the spider might be a stand-in for something. Ooh, interesting little glitch. Ooh, okay, so many things. Is the piano important? We have the bed with all the flowers and things. I love the switch before where I was saying there's lots of more light and color and stuff, but then we have shots like this where there's like the fog and more of like gray tones. So it's kind of like glitching and flipping between scenes where it is like bright and colorful and there's sunshine, and then these darker scenes. And the words again. Who do we have? Dragon? Ooh, okay, so was it, it's like hard for me to see everything. Was it Xian before who had the like rabbit plushie that we saw before, and then it looks like it's so hard with all the fog and them being far away and young. I'm like, who am I looking at? You'll let me know. I know Somnia's got my back. Was it Sua? Maybe with Xian? Ooh, okay, I love that we're seeing, I mean, the like markings on the hand is interesting to me, like this shot is really cool in general. We have like the forest again, which we saw in Good Night. That was kind of like they were being ensnared by it. And then the two paths, I also think is interesting that like decision, we also have like one in white and one in a darker color. So white usually associated with like purity, youth, that kind of a thing. And then darker colors kind of being tainting or changing of that purity and youth. Ooh, the like person with the candle in the windows is creepy, but also interesting. Oh, I didn't even notice that we have two down here. I know I'm not gonna get everything because there's gonna be a moment where I have to go through everything in this music video so I can pull out all of the stuff. The books again? Are these the books that we saw in Good Night, maybe? Ooh. The like contacts though? That is not the expression of somebody joyfully going through their youth, which is interesting. We're now getting a lot more scenes of them where it's like uncanny, right? Like their movements and the way that they're behaving is like almost mechanical in some ways, which is really interesting. It looks like they're eating a white flower or something. Again, white youth, 30 flowers also seen as like delicate, but also temporary because flowers bloom and then they wither. See, them all like turning at once is uncanny. Ooh, do not get trapped in the mirror yet. Ooh, so okay, there's so many things of like where we had like the books here, we had the mirror with Yohyun, the mirror with the Dreamcatcher on it again, then the books with Dami. Almost like she's casting a spell of some kind. And then the two Jius. And now a lot of darkness in the... And this separation too is also what I've noticed. We started off at the beginning where they were all together and they were happy and there was all these colors and light, and then we started getting more and more scenes of them almost like in pairs where they were doing things where there was 2 or 3 of them, and then now we're getting lots of shots where it's one of them doing something, so that like isolation between them becoming more and more extreme as the music video goes on. Ooh, good transition. I feel like I ruined that in my pause, so I'm gonna go back. She's very different in this. Okay, so was it Sua who was with before? Ooh, the cloaks we saw before too. With the like magnifying glass is interesting, but what were we doing? Were we... See, there's like the smoke. Were we burning the spider? That seems unnecessarily dark. Which is kind of the whole music video. It's getting more and more dark, uncanny. It's almost like they're switching between the kind of youth that they were at the beginning when they first came to this place, and then we have them transforming into something darker. Almost like she's hiding it too. And butterflies are transformations, so... Uh-oh. Are we getting out, or are we closing the gate so they can't get out? Oh, we're closing it. Ooh, that's like what I was saying. I'm like, is it running away trying to get out of the house, or are we closing the gate and keeping everything in? Which feels like that's what's happening. Is they're trying to keep whatever is in the house in. Does the formation mean something? I feel like I'm definitely gonna have to go through the music video a bunch more, and I'm gonna be like frame by frame looking at all the things. I think the music video did a really good job of like bringing in that duality that I was talking before about how it felt like it was switching from that like lightness to that darkness, and it was very jarring the way that it was doing it. And this one feels like it was kind of condensing maybe their story beforehand of what they were like when they first showed up at this, like, I don't know, estate thing that they're at, and then where they ended up. It was almost like they were shifting in their memories when we saw them. There was the one shot with Yechen where like she turned and she was one way and then it shifted and she had a very different expression on her face. So it's that parallel of them when they first showed up, they're very youthful and very happy. There's lots of colors and light and things like that, and then contrasting that with something darker, scarier, more confusion with what's going on. It feels like there's something within this house, this building, that is getting to them. I talked before about like the spider and how that was like outside and then they brought it into the house and then all these things started to happen. So maybe it was like them being trapped by whatever is in this house, this manor that they're in, and it's like starting to infect them. Again, them representing like nightmares, fears, and things like that. So it's almost like the house itself is like feeding off of those fears and making them like live through them, because a lot of it with them like being in the forest, I feel like isn't them actually in the forest, like outside. I feel like it's symbolic of what they're going through, because a lot of time in stories, forests are used as like cautionary tales, right? They're like these places where like fairy tales and fables happen as a way of like teaching lessons to not wander into forests. And they're usually very dark. They usually have things in them that are predatory or dangerous, and it's very easy for someone to wander into them and not wander out. So I feel like the forest is more about representing those fears and the nightmares that they have. But again, also in Celtic stories, forests are liminal space. Forests are the way that you get into like the other world, which is the representation of where all the mystical creatures of Celtic stories come from. So it also feels that way, like they've accidentally slipped into this space that is, again, that reality versus dream that they're in. So this one felt very jarring with those switches between those things. I do feel like I'm going to end up like over analyzing all of these things. Like once I've gone through all of the like nightmare stuff, I'm just like going to go back and like be like going through all the music videos back to back. I'm like, I'm gonna pull as much as I can of this story because I want to know all of the things. But really fascinating to see this one in contrast with the other ones where I'm used to it being much darker, more pulling from those horror thriller themes, and this one was a wonderful contrast of like what the beginning was and how they kind of started to fall down this path, and some of them being more, I think, in tune with like whatever this magic spell thing is that's going on, because we had Dami with the books, and then we had, I think, wasn't it Xian and Sua, who then had the cloaks. So maybe some of them getting into whatever this is before the other members and kind of pulling them in. And I do feel like Gio at the end was like closing the gate to like keep whatever is in this like estate in, being afraid that something is going to get out. So whatever it is that they're doing, maybe it has to do with them, you know, becoming these nightmares or these spirit creatures as a way of containing something, keeping something in that shouldn't be getting out. I don't know. This is just me throwing thoughts around. I feel like this one has been more of a mental exercise than some of the other ones, which I love. I love the more that I have to think and pull apart and get nuances of something, the more excited I get about it. So definitely let me know in the comments all of your thoughts, all the ways that you pulled this apart, and if there's stuff that they've like talked about in retrospect, because it's been a few years since this came out. Let me know all of the things. I always end up reading the comments. I love reading the comments. So I hope you enjoyed watching that along with me. You can click this playlist to go and see my previous reactions, or you can subscribe so that next time I post a Dreamcatcher reaction, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!